So since the folks at IK Multimedia have recently released their Tonex Editor for Tonex Pedal and Tonex One, I've received a lot of questions. I've done some videos on this, but I'm still receiving a lot of questions on one topic in particular, and there is a bit of confusion since the editor is going to behave quite different depending on whether we're using Tonex, the big original pedal, or Tonex One pedal. So I want to take you through a few things to watch out for that cover some of the most common questions that I've been receiving since the release of Tonex Editor. So first things first, I just want you to know my setup here. Basically what I have right now is I have both my Tonex Pedal and my Tonex One hooked up to the computer. I'm not going to show those on screen today. It's not really that important. We all know the Tonex Editor is simply an editor for these pedals. It's controlling the parameters on the pedal itself. It is not, as I've mentioned before, replacing Tonex software. It's just simply a controller, basically, for the pedals. But I have both hooked up to the computer at once, and I did this for a couple of reasons, because I want to be able to switch back and forth effortlessly to show you the differences, but also to show you that you can, and this is something I've spoken about already, but really important to reiterate, we can have both pedals hooked up to the same computer at the same time and switch seamlessly between them. Now, it does take a minute for it to sync to the library, but if we come up here to the top right-hand corner, you'll see right now I've got a green light and a picture of a big Tonex pedal, and it says Tonex right here. And that means that with the present settings that I have, what I'm doing is I'm editing my Tonex pedal. So even though I have a Tonex One hooked up, it's not going to edit that because I'm not having Tonex Editor speak to Tonex One right now. It's quote-unquote speaking to Tonex Pedal. But if I click this little pull-down menu or click the name of Tonex here, you'll notice, and sorry, some of it is off screen here, but there's enough to get the point across. You'll notice that there's a picture of Tonex One and a picture of the big Tonex pedal we have. So if I click to Tonex One now, it's going to take a second to sync things up. It syncs faster with Tonex One because the library is much smaller. There's only 20 tone models or presets on there. But you'll now see there's a little spinning circle here, and we get a picture of Tonex One pedal with the little green light, meaning now I'm controlling Tonex One, and you can see here what I have on Tonex One. But you will notice quite a different look to things. We now have this other little row here that has dual mode and stomp mode, which makes sense since that's how Tonex One is going to work. Now, if I switch back to Tonex Pedal, I'm going to just click that and let you see how long it takes to kind of sync the library up. Really not too bad. It is going to be a little longer than Tonex One just because there's a lot more tone models and presets to actually sync up. So I'll do this in real time with no editing just to show you how it's going to work when we switch over to it. And you can kind of see the spinning circle up here and the red light, which is meaning we're not actually hooked up yet. It's in the process of syncing that up and getting ready to be able to edit on the Tonex big pedal. All right, there you have it. So this little spinning circle takes a second after that, although we could start working now. We have the green light, and then the little picture will show up here of Tonex Pedal. So basically here we have the controls of each tone model. You can see the tone models that I have loaded on here. I have my Jack Victor tone model collection. I'm going to have the links below to that, and I'm going to also play you a demo video on the way out utilizing those in the mix. This has been an insanely popular tone model. It's based off of my incredible Victory V30, the Jack Mark II amp, captured through my 212 Rev Amplifications vintage 30 loaded cab. These tone models sound absolutely spectacular and very versatile, going through the clean, crunch, and overdrive channel. So basically a set of tones that you could probably get through almost any gig regardless of style with. Anyways, let's pick one of these. Let's go over to Clean 2, let's say. And one thing I want to point out here, and this is going to be one of the main differences between utilizing Tonex One versus Tonex Pedal, is that as I'm working in Tonex, the big pedal, as we are right now, as I come down on my list and click on these tone models and presets in my list, the tones change. Now, if we come over to Tonex One, you'll notice that if I have similar tones, and you'll notice again I have these same tone models loaded on here. Now the one thing you will hear, just in case anybody notices, I am hooked up coming out of Tonex One into my audio interface in mono versus the Tonex Pedal in stereo. So if you hear a difference in like the reverb or something, that's all you're hearing. There's no difference in the sound between these tone models. But if I come down to this list here and click these, you'll notice that nothing changes on the sound coming out of the pedal. And this is one difference I really wanted to point out, is that when utilizing Tonex One, we have to actually take the tone model and drag it up to the slot we want. And you'll notice this slot is selected. If I go to this one, we get a different tone model. So coming down here and clicking isn't going to do anything. I need to actually drag this up. Okay, so that is one question that I've been getting a lot, that they go, well, I'm clicking on my tone models here in Tonex One, but nothing is changing in the sound. And that's the way it's supposed to work. We need to actually drag it up to that slot. Very, very important. Then I can switch over to my B slot. And that is based off of another great set of tone models I have, the Plex King Ultimate Collection, which is based off of my incredible Tone King Royalist Mark III. I'll have the links below to all the tones that I'm utilizing in today's video. So that's number one thing I wanted to cover, is just that when we are using Tonex One, we can't just simply click down here in the list. When we're using Tonex Pedal, though, we can just click down here because there are no slots to drag this to. These are the slots. So as we click through these, we're actually selecting the tone on the pedal. So now while we're over here on Tonex Pedal, I want you to take note of something, and this may be the biggest question, the biggest point of confusion folks are having. When we're on the big Tonex Pedal, people have watched my videos and said, hey, I don't have a revert button, or I don't have a save button over here. So what happens here is you'll notice there's a revert button and a save button. They're grayed out right now. I cannot click on them. But let's come over to one of our tone models here. Let's go with the Crunch One from the Jack Victor V30 Ultimate Collection. Let's say I wanted to add some delay to that. Come in here to a tape delay. We'll put sync on. Okay, so we've made a change. Now, as I've mentioned before, the name of our tone model goes into italics. We have a little asterisk beside it, meaning there have been changes made to this. Now, if I switch out of this, you'll notice that goes back to normal. The italics and asterisks are gone, and I switch back. Well, my delay's turned off now, and there's good reason for it. Basically, what happened is I forgot to save, and I switched out from this. So if I put that delay back on, we'll get back to where we had it. What I need to do here is hit save or do the pull down menu and save as. Save as is going to be if I want to load this or save it into a bit different bank or slot. Obviously, we're going to overwrite whatever it is. We can change the name to a different name, maybe with delay, right? But I could also just hit save and it's going to sync up. And now I've added that delay to this preset. If I switch away from that and then back, you'll notice that the delay is now on there. Great, wonderful. If I was deciding I want to turn that delay off, I turn it off. Now we get this same italics and asterisk, and I have to resave it again. If I navigate away and then back, that delay is still going to be on because I didn't save it with it off. So let's turn it off. Now, another interesting thing, we know we could hit save or save as, but you'll notice the revert button becomes active. So let's say we've made a bunch of changes to this. Let's say we turn the delay on. You'll notice the revert button goes away because that's its present state. But let's come to the amp controls. Let's say I adjust the gain. I've made a change. So now the revert button is active, the save button is active. Let's say I bring the bass back a little bit, tiny bit of treble, bring the presence down, a little depth. I'm just making arbitrary changes here. I change my model volume. Let's say I come to my compressor and I bring the threshold up a bit. Just little arbitrary changes just to have some changes. Now, we've made a bunch of changes and we kind of sit there and go, wait, where did I start again? I can't really remember. Maybe we're playing this. And we go, I just kind of want to get back to where I started. The revert button is going to be what we're going to use. If I hit revert, you'll notice that all those changes we made just go back to where they were. The save button is no longer active, but we cannot go back and get all those changes back again to go back and forth between them. We've reverted back, and we'd have to go make those again. So it is a nice safety net that if you did want to revert back, then it allows us the ability to do so. Now, the problem is if we do make a bunch of these changes, let's bring the gain down to 4, and we'll turn the delay off, and we hit save, you'll notice that the revert button is no longer active. Once we save, we no longer have the ability to revert back. So that is something we would want to be careful of. So we'd want to remember the changes we make. But, you know, if I wanted this and I remember things, then we're fine. Now let's go over to Tonex One and watch here very carefully to the revert button and the save button when we make this switch over to Tonex One. Okay, here we are back over at Tonex One. You'll notice no revert button, no save button. Doesn't matter what I do, it's not going to bring those back because they are not part of utilizing the editor on Tonex One. A lot of folks ask why. Now, this is not an opinion on whether autosave on Tonex One is a good feature or a bad feature. I know some people are not happy with autosave, and I know some people are happy with it, but I'm just delivering the message. This is the way Tonex One works. Since it has autosave, and let's say I came over to my slot A here in dual mode, and I'm utilizing the Jack Victor V30 Crunch 1, switch between those, but let's stay here. Let's say I make a change to that. Let's say I bring the gain down and I add some delay to that. Every time I make one of these changes, it is auto-saved to the pedal. So now I didn't have any need to save as, which the positive to that is this. Let's remember we have Crunch 1 we've made those changes to. Let's say I try a different tone model here and I go to Clean 3. And I go, you know what? Actually, I want Crunch 1 back, and I drag this back up to my slot. You will notice all those changes have stayed because it auto-saved. So if we accidentally navigate away by dragging a different tone model up to a slot up here, we're not going to lose those changes. So there is no need for a save button or a revert button utilizing Tonex One, simply because with the auto save feature, we don't have to click a save button. And the revert button only works before we hit the save button on Tonex Pedal. So the fact that there is no save button and it's auto saved instantly as soon as we make the change, we don't have the ability to revert back. So that is probably one of the biggest points of confusion, something I really wanted to point out and shine a spotlight on. The other difference too is if we come over to the Librarian tab, we know the Librarian is used to drag tone models from our software library over here to our hardware library. The neat thing with Tonex One hooked up, since we have to drag the tone model to one of the slots to have it active and audible on our pedal, we can do that right from the Librarian tab as well. So that when we go back to the editor, those slots are going to actually have the tone models we want. Coming back over to Tonex Pedal, we obviously don't have those slots because these are our slots. So anything we drag over and choose here, when we come over here, will just be active on our editor side as well. And this is what we're going to hear. So as we're on the Librarian tab, if we want to play our tones, we can simply select them from the list, and that's going to change on the pedal and what we're actually hearing as active. Now, obviously, another difference between Tonex One and Tonex Pedal is going to be in the global settings. So obviously, when we're on the big Tonex Pedal, we're going to have the ability to control all of these Tonex Big Pedal global settings. Now, one thing I did want to mention at present, I've had a lot of questions about whether we can actually assign the details of a macro function, and we cannot do that at present. And hopefully that's something the folks at IK can introduce at a later date. I have no knowledge as to whether they have the ability to or are planning on it, but hopefully it would be something that would be in there. But for now, we can set the single switch assignment to macro, but we have to actually go down to our physical pedal to make those assignments by pressing the buttons. But we do have all our other global settings in here, including live and interface mode. So something to be careful about if we're playing around here and we're auditioning the tone of our pedal and we switch to interface mode, because I don't have Tonex Pedal at present set up in interface mode, I'm going to lose my sound. I'd have to then utilize Tonex Pedal as an interface. So we have to be careful to not mess around with that. So if you're not getting any sound out of it, you might want to head into global settings and check to see that you're not in interface mode if you mean to be in live mode, and vice versa. Moving back to Tonex One, if we come up to our gear icon, this is where we're going to find global setup. I'm sorry, a little bit it's off the screen here, but you can see enough to get what you need out of it. So if we come to global setup, obviously we're going to have a few less options in here, but just basically what the global settings always were on Tonex One. We can control our input trim like we could on the big boy. Tuner, right? I've talked about these before, but one thing to be very, very careful of is direct monitoring on and off. This is going to be kind of sort of similar to live versus interface mode. And you can see here, it says enable direct monitoring to use Tonex One for play along purposes without the use of the Tonex software. This will allow your guitar signal to be sent through Tonex One's pedal processing directly to the pedal's output. Disable direct monitoring to use Tonex One as an audio interface. So again, if I come in here and turn direct monitoring off, in the present setup that I have, I basically lose my tone and there's no sound coming out. So again, if you're not getting any sound, you might want to come in and check to see whether direct monitoring is set to the appropriate setting for the situation you're in. All right, so I think that covers the main points that I wanted to cover based off of the numerous questions that I've been receiving about those topics. And I hope that helps to clear up some of the confusion around some of the finer details and how we can use Tonex Editor in the appropriate way depending on whether we're using the original Tonex Big Pedal or Tonex One. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I really truly do hope it was helpful. I'm going to leave you today with the demo video for some of those tone models we were listening to today to mess around with the different pedals, and this is the Jack Victor V30 collection. You can hear how these tones work together in a mix, so I hope you enjoy that on the way out. All the tones you heard today, the links are below to those tone models in the description. Please like the video, share it with anybody you think would get some use or enjoyment out of watching it. Also, please subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.